Thank you again for joining us here at the Fasanara Capital Ltd podcast. We are here in Riyadh at the offices of Forus for our next episode with a very special guest. We have today myself, Matt Kus, the head of origination for developed markets. I'm joined by our founder and CEO, Francesco Filia, senior associate from the origination team, Shreya Dumar, and our very special guest, the CEO and founder of Forus, Nosaiba Al-Raji. Nosaiba, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
And Nosaiba, if you could just maybe give a brief introduction to everyone of Forus, as what is your business model, who are your primary borrowers, and what is your focus?
Great. So I established Forus in late 2018 while I was doing my MBA in Madrid. And that kind of transpired when very early on there was the Vision 2030 program that has just been launched, and in parallel the program to develop the financial sector was about to be launched. And given my background is in investment banking, and I had been in investment banking for quite a while, and given my network within CMA and SAMA and the larger scope of the financial sector, I started hearing about fintech and about this program. And given my travels back and forth to Madrid, I really started to become exposed to fintech, different kinds of fintechs. And I think at the time, there was a lot of fintechs focused on brokerage and investments, and I had heard a little bit about credit and financing, especially in the US and in Europe. And that really engaged my curiosity. So, speaking with people with the central bank, they created a subsidy called Fintech Saudi, which was a nonprofit organization under the umbrella of the Saudi Central Bank, and their mission was to be the voice of fintech. To be the enablers of fintech without being, a for-profit organization. Their job was to lobby with different providers, data providers, and just create an ecosystem. So we started from the beginning. I was very interested. I did some research. I did some gap analysis in the market. Okay. And I found there was the largest gap, but also the largest return was in credit, was in financing. And that was kind of the first, green flag, which, there's a lot of interest in this area.
Sure.
Doing a bit of discussions with people in the financial industry and then digging deeper, our initial interest was in retail financing.
Okay.
But looking at that market at that time, 2018, it was still very much manual. NPLs were a bit high. And if you're a fintech and you're just starting out, you would need a very big operation to enter that space. But then we started thinking a little bit outside the box. What areas or what segments in the market were really underserved? Mm-hmm. And that's where we identified SMEs. And we found that the market was about $150 billion. Okay. It was very interesting to see that given Vision 2030, there was a huge focus on we want to diversify GDP. We want to grow a healthy SME ecosystem because we have a lot of government programs and semi-government programs, and we need these SMEs to be very stable and strong. We also have, if we link it to, for example, employment rates. Yeah. Because the biggest employers are SMEs. Yes. So SMEs need to be healthy and strong within an economy. So at the time, I believe the contribution to the contribution of the private sector to the GDP was around 25%, and the target was to increase it to 35% of total GDP, so that we would depend less on oil and more on diversifying the economy. And I think we've done a great job as an economy and as people in the private sector. In doing so. So that's kind of the backstory. And we started very slowly with the central bank. So initially they did launch a fintech sandbox. And we were one of the first companies, the first fintechs to enter that sandbox. It was a very small sandbox, and we were given a very specific mandate So we decided to start building a fintech that focused on financing SMEs. We wanted to enable SMEs, we wanted to provide them with fast and easy access to capital, and we wanted to do it in the right and safe way for our investors as well. So we started building the business model, we started building the different products, the workflows, we built our technology, we worked with the companies in Europe, because we knew that Europe was very good at innovations in different fintechs. So
Sure.
so we started with an MVP and we slowly built it. We built our MVP and then we had to go to the market and grab data. So we had to go to a lot of companies who own the data and educate them about fintech and why we needed this data. But the good thing is that we had the support of the SAMA. We had the support of SAMA, and SAMA, if they weren't responsive, SAMA would call them, says these are fintechs, we're regulating them, give them the data they need so that they can, be enabled to finance SMEs. So we became a part of building the infrastructure of the financial sector.
Wow.
Data, banking data, KYC data, national address. We worked with the banks on how do we create virtual IBANs, how does the operation work, how does money flow from different accounts. With one bank, it was to the point where the management team couldn't understand what we were talking about. They said, listen, we're just going to bring our entire IT team, you explain it to them.
Wow. That's amazing. So it's I think one of the things that stuck out to us and made it so attractive to establish this partnership is the fact that within the framework of Vision 2030, within this push to increase the GDP contribution of private sector and to encourage new sectors such as non-bank lending, which you are a pioneer in this market within, you had this opportunity to shape things from the start. And that's really serving you so well, we already see, in terms of the approach to underwriting, in terms of that establishment of a fully digital framework of data that you can source to make better decisions for your borrowers. So I think that's something we are very impressed by. It's something we're very encouraged by. But it's also something that's so unique, I'd say, to so many of the people listening, to so many of the people watching now on YouTube. They think of the limitations that their countries have within data sources, and specifically within the SME sector. The data you can get on an SME borrower is limited by the infrastructure of that region. So it's great to hear of an example where you took a clean slate approach, you were able to have this positive relationship with the regulator, with banks, and building something together. And it's just something we're very excited to see it continue to grow. Maybe within the context of that discussion, could you speak to any of the challenges that you faced at outset, in addition to maybe the lack of familiarity from the bank side? From the regulator side, was there also any friction at outset when you joined that sandbox environment in 2019? So
the regulator was the one pushing for development of the financial sector, and they were the main supporter. They created within the central bank a completely new unit. The unit was called Development of the Financial Sector.
Okay.
And their core objective was to push digitization, automation, fintech within the market. Funny challenges is when you're almost a pioneer in creating a new industry, you don't have a benchmark. You have nothing to compare yourself to.
Yeah.
You have no best practices you can follow within the region. There are globally, and we have seen things globally, but looking at that was one of the challenges. There was resistance from the market, very specifically from different agencies and data sources that we had to work with. It was a bit of not understanding, how we work. They thought it was silly in the beginning. What do you mean? You're crowdfunding and
it was different.
Yeah, individuals are funding us. What do you mean? No, that sounds like a joke. It sounds like impossible. We had people laugh at us and think that we were crazy.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I remember in the very early days, we had gone to visit one of the traditional financing companies, and our initial approach is that let's work together, let's partner on co-financing SMEs. It would be a win-win. He laughed us out the door and said, "You guys are crazy.
Oh my gosh.
You will never be successful. You will never understand risk. You will never understand credit."
Oh my gosh.
What's funny today is that 4 or 5 years down the road, they're struggling and we're doing very well. They are one of the oldest companies in financing. But I think resistance to change, was one of the challenges we faced. It was definitely a challenge because we were still building things with the market. So it wasn't there. We had to build it with the market.
Yeah.
We had to go to, the Ministry of Commerce and get them to understand what fintech was and how it works. And then we had to go to this agency and say, well, we're fintech and then we need this kind of data. And data sometimes will come, incorrectly, and sometimes the API wouldn't work, and sometimes this or that. I remember when we were building our MVP, so one of the things we had to do is we had to connect to the core banking system. And I remember the developers, they were from Europe, and they were like, "This code is very old."
Oh, jeez, I can imagine. Oh my, yeah.
And we had to do so many, workarounds to get it to work. We got it to work, and hopefully today banks are, at a different level. They've completely digitized, and now, open banking has been regulated. But 5 years ago, it was kind of taking baby steps and holding everyone's hand to get it through. One of the challenges we expected, but surprised us, is that when we launched, it was a little bit before Corona. And what we expected is, fintech is an unknown industry, it's an unknown space, it's very high risk, we're an unknown brand, why would anyone invest with us? And we were so surprised that when we launched our first campaign, it was covered in minutes.
Oh wow.
And the minimum ticket was 1,000 riyals.
Sure.
We expected everyone to put the minimum. We didn't expect them to put the maximum.
Wow.
Everyone put the maximum.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we were looking at it like, why?
Amazing. And thank you for that. It's really fascinating to hear your journey. Nusaiba, what is your USP? What do you think will make you the winner in the market, or what is already making you winning in the market?
So today, I think us being the trailblazers, our brand has become very well known. So the equity of our brand, number one, is very well known. The second thing is that we provide products that no other fintech provides in the SME space. So we're talking about the umbrella of working capital, supply chain finance, inventory finance, and the products we're working on coming forward. No one is doing that in the SME space. Competitors and players in the fintech space today seem to be only focused on omni products, so one product, so each one of them focus on one product. The second thing is that we own our technology. So we also are technology focused. We build our technology, we own our code, we develop it regularly. So we're very versatile, we're very technology focused. And that's very important as a fintech because you have very high operations and very high transactions, and you want to be able to further innovate those different transactions with your customers. I also think that our ability to be very versatile and enter in different relationships with agencies, government agencies, semi-government agencies makes us very unique.
And if you had to talk about a new product or trend that you're seeing in the market right now, what are you seeing in the Saudi market and what are you focusing on right now?
I think the Saudi market is very exciting today. The Saudi market is, first of all, economically very stable. It has very consistent growth. And the government is very focused on diversifying the economy and diversifying the different elements of growth. Secondly, given Saudi has won the Asia Cup, the World Cup, and the Expo, that has further boosted the growth projections for the next few years, and that's also supportive of many different sectors like construction, supply chain, logistics, entertainment, and then all other supporting industries. There is also a huge demand for real estate, both commercial and retail. And we're seeing there's a huge boom in development in Riyadh. Everywhere you go, there's construction. And that gives you a very positive indicator of how things are going. So I think in terms of financing products, I think there will be a lot of emphasis on real estate financing, real estate development financing, not mortgage financing. And then number two, we will be seeing a lot of government-backed project financing for SMEs within the different sectors.
And what do you think will happen to your company in the next 5 years? What are your big goals, your milestones? How do you look at the future? What do you think will be, like the evolution of your company over the next 5 years?
Well, we have a very clear strategy of where we want to go in the next 5 years. We will obviously continue to grow our portfolio, continue to grow our market share through diversifying our products. And one of the products we're going to focus on in the next period is real estate development financing. I think that will dramatically grow our portfolio faster than what we expected. We are looking to IPO in 3 years. So one of our focuses is on consistent growth within the market. We also see ourselves expanding in other complementary products because we do have an investor and then we do have an SME. So we have multiple customers and we find ourselves creating things like wallets and different services to our investors. So hopefully an IPO.
And Nosaiba, as a crowdlending platform, you're in a unique position where you do have kind of two sets of customers. You have those customers whom come to you on the investment side, who look at the platform as a way to capture more yield while also helping to facilitate more funding flows towards Saudi SMEs and hitting those 2030 targets. And then on the other side, you have the Saudi SME borrowers. Can you speak a little bit more to kind of the size of that opportunity in respect with those new products, those new initiatives in terms of the SME funding gap in Saudi? Why is it that there is this opportunity for a non-bank lender in Saudi serving SMEs?
I mean, that's a very dynamic question and it's a very interesting one. And I can only maybe give you my perspective on it.
Sure.
But I think that given the size of the market, there are 12 banks in Saudi Arabia. There are 3 large banks, and then the rest are smaller banks. The banks have historically and traditionally focused on the retail side, and I think they still continue to do so. And that's the larger market, and margins within retail is much higher than SME. The banks today are still very much focused on, things like mortgage financing, car financing, credit cards, deposits, etc. And then they have, from the lending side, greenfield and corporate syndications that they are more focused on. So then in the middle you have that SME gap, which they're kind of overlooking. We have a focus here and we have a focus here. So that isn't an interest for them to kind of focus on. They would need to realign their strategy. They need to build also new capabilities. Because through our experience we've realized that the SME sector, there is a huge opportunity, but it's also very fragmented. And there's micro, small, medium, large, and if you don't understand it very well, you could easily get lost. And I don't think the banks are interested in going down that road. Which is good for us. It gives us a great opportunity. It's the market is over $150 billion in size, and that's only the financing opportunity in the SME space, which is a huge market. And then given the investment of the government within different projects, I think it's a win-win.
Absolutely, we couldn't agree more.
And it's obviously really amazing what you've built in this market in the past 5 years. If you want to take this opportunity to highlight, your single achievement or someone you want to shout out to, or what would you like to highlight about your experience so far?
I think so. It's been a long journey. So we were in the sandbox for 3 years, and during the 3 years, the central bank was still developing the regulations, and the regulations have to be approved by a higher government, which is the Shura Council, and it usually takes a long time. We received immense support from the central bank in that journey until licensing, and I think getting a license in a new industry for the first time is a huge achievement. Being able to build a portfolio, of this size and then going beyond it as a fintech, I think is a huge achievement. One thing, that I can is that from day one of the mandates to enter the sandbox was we had to hire a compliance manager. And Abdurrahman Al-Kanhal was maybe one of the key people the key people in helping the company achieve the license. And I think without him, we wouldn't have a license.
Well, I gotta say that's a refreshing answer in that, I think a lot of people are frustrated often by regulation. They're frustrated by the requirements of a regulator for licensing, but it's been so nice to see your approach to essentially saying, let's do it right the first time. Let's go the right path so that we build something that has a strong foundation, which is now allowing you to grow at pace and launch these new products without worrying, hey, is there a gap that we're going to have to fill later on? Are we potentially exposed to a regulatory issue? It's been, again, I think I said it before, but it's worth repeating that when due diligencing you, seeing the level of institutionalization within your not just credit risk framework, but your operational risk framework and approach to compliance, it's really been something that's impressive and gives us the confidence to know that we can enter into this partnership for the long term to help, again, achieve Fasanara's goal of supporting SME economies worldwide via the leading platform in Saudi who's supporting SME borrowers. So it's been really nice to see that. And so we really appreciate the chance to learn more about Forus today, to learn about some of your new products, to learn about some of the challenges you faced. If you could maybe highlight, just before we close out, we like to, again, because a lot of our listeners are other people who are entrepreneurs, who are thinking of launching businesses, who are thinking of building lending models, if you had any one piece of advice for someone on, a lesson learned or a word of encouragement that you would like to give anyone who's thinking of starting a career in lending or fintech, I'll give you the chance to share some of your wisdom.
So I think, looking back at our journey, one consistent thing we continued to do was, regardless of the challenge, setbacks, we continued to move forward. We continued to push boundaries, and we continued to ask questions. So if we didn't know the answer, we would try to ask anyone we could to get the answer. We didn't take no for an answer. There will be challenges, there will be setbacks, there will be a lot of, tough situations, a lot of difficult things that will take place, but if you have a clear plan, a clear path forward, you should go to the end, don't stop.
That's great advice.
Perfect. And where can people find you to know more about Forus and yourself?
Well, they can know more about Forus through our website, so forusinvest.com. And through me, you can find me through LinkedIn.
Will you be at any conferences coming up, any fintech events here in Saudi or in the region?
So all fintech regional events are usually end of year, so nothing has been planned as of yet. I have been invited to GITEX in Morocco in April, but I haven't confirmed.
Okay.
So nothing is confirmed yet. I think it's too early in the year.
Okay, so stay tuned so you can see Nosaga this year and hear more in person. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Digital Dividend.